Hi guys, Dave Wilson here again, and today, great project. I'm going to make this really thick, really heavy double Belcher chain, and I'm going to make it with square wire. So a few tips on making Belcher chains, how to speed it up, and loads of tips on working with square wire. So you're going to really love this. So grab your wire, follow me. Although it looks unusual, this is simply a Belcher chain. It's just doubled up, so instead of having one link at a time, you can see here it has 2 in 2. The second thing is that it's made using square wire, and I really love the chunky look of this. It's got a nice geometric look and it's very tactile to play with. So let's get started. To make this, I'm using about 2 meters, that's about 6 feet of square wire. Try to get wire that's already annealed, as when you get to this thickness of wire it can be really difficult to work with if it's hard. If the wire is springy, then you must anneal it first. Keep about 6 inches to make a hook later on, and the rest needs to be made into jump rings. To make an 8.5 inch bracelet, I'm going to need about 85 jump rings, so as a rough guide it's about 10 jump rings per inch. And the final bracelet will be about 45 grams. I'm using a 5.5mm mandrel, but imagine I have round wire 1.5mm diameter. Well, if I use square wire the same 1.5mm, then notice how there's a lot of extra material here at the corners. So if you're making a chain that's quite tight with round wire, then using the same size square wire probably won't work. You'll need to use a smaller square wire in order to give you the same amount of room to make the bracelet. So do have a play with square wire, but do experiment first with a couple of rings before you commit yourself. I'm using a Pepe tool jump ring maker here, but however you are winding your coils, it's a great tip to use parallel pliers. Wind slowly and keep the wire flat at all times. You mustn't allow it to twist. Just a little top tip here for using parallel pliers. You can actually thread the wire all the way through the middle of your pliers. If you're doing this by hand, then clamp your mandrel securely and wind very carefully using the pliers to keep the wire flat. Saw your rings. I'm using the Pepe tool jump ring maker here with a large blade and going very slowly. If you're using a jeweler's saw, then use a medium cut blade and lots of wax or lube. If you have a tumbler, then tumble them for about half an hour to remove any burrs and polish and clean them. Now my bracelet is going to be fully soldered, and to do this one at a time is very time consuming. But with the Belcher chain you can close and solder half of the links beforehand, and this is the secret to making Belcher chains very quickly. So in this case I'm going to close and solder 40 rings. Once again, you should always use parallel pliers when working with square wire. Your regular chain nose pliers or flat ones will pinch the edges. Once you've closed each ring, pop it entirely in between the jaws of your parallel pliers and give a good hard squeeze. It just helps keep everything nice and flat and square. So I've closed 40 links and laid them all out on my soldering block. Remember, it's always a great idea to make a few extra in case any of them don't work out too well. When you've done them all, simply pick the best ones. Simple as that. Flux all your rings. I'm using borax, and place each one on a small pallion of solder. Don't use too much. The weight of the ring will prevent the solder from flying off once it's heated. Once prepared, you can solder all 40 rings in one go. Super quick, nice and easy. Pittle and rinse. You now need to inspect the links. If there's any excess solder, clean it up now using a 600 buff stick. Remember to keep the buff stick flat to the surfaces. If you put them back onto the mandrel, you can polish the outer surface. It's easier to do this now. Also, because the links are together on the mandrel, there's no danger of rounding off the corners. Personally, I run them in a tumbler once again, just to keep everything nice and shiny as I go. It's really difficult to polish the inside of these links once the chain is assembled, so keep everything nice and clean. 40 links, soldered and polished. Open all the remaining links and we can now start assembly, and this is the fast way to make a Belcher chain. Take an open ring and add 4 closed ones. Close and put it to one side. Keep repeating until you've used up all of the closed rings. You should now have about 10 little sections. Next, connect them together by taking 2 soldered links from one section and 2 soldered links from the next section and connect them with an open jump ring. Keep adding sections to the end until all the sections have been attached. At this point you can check the length. Your bracelets need to be about an inch shorter than the final length because we'll be adding the hoop later. We can now solder these single links. Prop up the link using locking tweezers. Flux and add a pallion of hard solder. Here I'm pick soldering. Ball up a little piece of solder and just as it cools, poke your solder pick into it. You can then pick it up and place it exactly where you need it and it won't fall off. Pick soldering. Direct your flame away from the other links. Quench and move on, but note that your tweezers may be hot, so do be careful with that. When you've done all the links, piddle and rinse. Again, at this stage you should check your soldering and do any clean up if required using your buff sticks. Again, I usually pop them in the tumbler, as once we've put the last rings on you won't be able to get to this inner surface to clean it. So we're almost there. We now need to double up these links exactly as before. This can get a little bit fiddly now, but if you allow the chain to hang you'll find that you have a little bit more movement. Likewise, soldering these last links is also a little bit tricky, but using your locking tweezers, separate the rings. Note I'm clamped to the soldered ring. The tweezers will help protect the previous solder joint because we don't want to solder the rings together. Handle your flame away from the ring and use a small hot flame. Quench and then move on, and then when you've done all of them, piddle and rinse the whole chain. Now if I can just interrupt myself for a second guys, just give you a close-up shot here. I just want to emphasise how important it is to use these locking tweezers in this way, because we're doing several things. First of all, it's supporting the chain, so it's giving us that hang, so we've got as much space as possible at the top. Because we're holding the back pre-soldered ring there, it means that it's acting as a heat shunt to keep the heat away and to stop the solder joint from melting. It's also acting as a shield because it's in between the two, so I can direct loads of heat here and the back ring is being shielded. And also a great little tip, the pre-soldered ring that you're holding at the back, make sure your solder joint is down here underneath so it's out of the way. And using it this way means that there's no possible danger of damaging that rear ring or soldering the pair of them together. So if you've got a slightly bigger torch than I have, like you've got one of the little butane chef's torch or something, you'll be absolutely fine. As long as you direct your heat towards the tweezers and upwards at an handle, you'll be absolutely fine. So really important tip that. So moving on. I'm now going to make a hook. This is the same technique you've seen me do before, but this time I'm soldering it. Start with about 6 inches of wire and bend it in the centre to form a hairpin shape. Using your parallel pliers, ensure that it's closed and close fitting all the way along. Flux the whole length and add several pallions of hard solder. Heat with a broad flame and chase the solder all the way along. Piddle and rinse. Square the end with a file and using flat round nose pliers, curl the end around to make a closed loop. Ideally this wants to be the same size as the mandrel that you used. Attach it to the end of your chain through 2 links and close the loop. Solder the loop closed and it's not as difficult as you might think. Just hold it up and direct your flame upwards away from the other links. Piddle and rinse. If you want to polish the hook, do it now. Once you're happy with it, bend up the end a little on the same side as the loop, like this. Then using your mandrel, bend the loop in the middle to form a small hook. Ensure that your hook goes through a link which is at 90 degrees to it. Add or remove one link as necessary, and then check your length again. You can now polish the bracelet using a tumbler. If using a bench polisher, use a firm stitch mop and go very lightly, as you don't want to round off the corners. Clean with hot soapy water, and there you have it, a beautiful square Belcher chain. So do play around with square wire, it can really add a nice dimension to your chains and bracelets. I've been Dave Wilson. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon on the next video. Bye for now.